What is up, Bears fans? Welcome to the Bears Huddle podcast, your UK take on all things Chicago Bears. The off-season is now officially well underway for the Bears after we exited the playoffs out of the weekend against the Los Angeles Rams. And guys, I think I can say with a shadow of a doubt, I've watched that game again, and frustration, I think, is the biggest thing for me. I think we left a lot of opportunities out there on the field. A lot of opportunities to win that game were left out there, and I think the Bears deserve a whole load of credit for taking probably the best, if not, the best, or even the second best. If you take the Seahawks, has been the best team in the NFL all the way to the overtime. And a game we could have and easily should have won that game. You know, there's so many what-if moments in that game, and it may appear like sour grapes or hindsight or whatever you can talk. The Rome Odunze drop touchdown pass. You know, the 3 points that were passed up a number of times by Ben Johnson, the interception when DJ Moore just quit on his route. I think big questions need to be asked about DJ's future at the Bears as well. You know, there's lots and lots of things we can talk about and discuss, obviously, that could have happened, that should have happened. But it is what it is, guys. It's over. We move on. The off-season begins. And look, whatever you think of that exit, you've got to give the Bears huge credit this season for a season that I think many people didn't predict. Many people would have said that the Bears would have been, you know, a 9-win team, a team that didn't make the playoffs, a team that would have got a well done, you've improved, but that's about it. You know, everyone expected the Lions and the Packers to obviously come out of the NFC North to obviously fight out to win the division, and then both of them go into the playoffs. But the Bears win the NFC North, much to the Packers fans' upset, and we still keep hearing the sour grapes from Lambeau. What a bunch of inbred mutants they really are. You know, at the end of the day, we look at this season as been a true success, a big success. You know, Caleb has made leaps forward this season. Plus, you know, there's lots of players. The running game has developed very, very well. Bieniemy obviously deserves a lot of credit, along with Dan Rauschar for that. And I think that brings me on to kind of, you know, the fact that Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson and the Bears owners deserve an awful lot of credit at the start of last year, that they let Ben Johnson build a quite formidable coaching staff. You know, the coaching staff that the Bears have is formidable. It is quality. And with the fact that obviously there's no salary cap for coaches, you can bring in as many coaches as you want, or as higher quality coaches as you want. The Bears certainly did that. You know, Declan Doyle, Press Taylor, JT Barrett, Dan Rauschar, the best line coach in the NFL, in my opinion. Obviously, Dennis Allen, former head coach, brought in as a DC. Al Harris, another amazing secondary coach. Eric Bieniemy, former OC, brought in as a running backs coach. You know, so many names. And I think one of the things that's kind of happening now is there's a lot of NFL teams like vultures swooping around the Chicagoland area, looking at these coaches and thinking we could pick these guys up, particularly the position coaches for OC jobs, for DC jobs. You know, I don't think anyone is going to be particularly looking at Declan Doyle or Dennis Allen for head coach jobs at this point in time. I think, you know, perhaps a year or two down the line, that could be a position if the Bears go on to, you know, continue this success and obviously progress to the Super Bowl at some point. You know, you're going to have conversations around that. But, you know, one coach that is now being linked with a possible exit from the Bears staff is this man here, Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy, the former Kansas City OC, Washington Commanders OC, a guy who has held that position, had a number of very high positions, was brought in as a running backs coach this year by Ben Johnson, and he has been absolutely outstanding. You know, if you go back to training camp, you only look at the intensity this man brought, the determination this man brought to turn these running backs into high quality running backs. And look, yeah, you know, it's not all down to Eric Bieniemy. I think Ben Johnson, massive part of that. Dan Rauschar, massive part of that. So, you know, whilst I, you know, obviously give Eric Bieniemy a huge amount of credit for the work that he did to develop Carmen Ungai, to develop DeAndre Swift, to develop one of the best running attacks in the NFL, you know, you do obviously kind of perhaps do a disservice to some of the other guys if you ignore that. You know, the work that Dan Rauschar did with that offensive line, who blasted big holes in opposition defensive lines for DeAndre Swift, for Carmen Ungai to blast through. You know, the work that Ben Johnson clearly did on it. You know, Ben Johnson is the offensive mind of this team. So, you know, look, yes, it is still, you know, others are involved. Now, Eric Bieniemy is a very, very good coach. He is an intense coach. He is a high quality coach. And I have no doubt that he has had some input into the offense this year that goes beyond the running back team. Now, one story that is emanating at this moment in time is that Kansas City could well be looking for a new OC. Matt Nagy, remember him, could well get the Tennessee Titans head coach's job, more for them. If Nagy moves on, which appears highly likely at this point, then Eric Bieniemy is the top name to be take over for the Kansas City Chiefs as their offensive coordinator. Now, the talk certainly at this moment in time is that the Chiefs have asked for permission to speak to Bieniemy to be their new OC with the exit of Nagy. So, look, it appears it's already beginning, and Eric Bieniemy obviously has that contact with the Chiefs. He has that relationship with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes already, having already worked for them. And I think there will be a strong desire within Eric Bieniemy and within Eric Bieniemy's people to move back to Kansas City, to become an OC again. With the greatest will in the world, he's going to want to progress. He's going to want to get back to where he was. So, there's a strong likelihood that our running backs coach could be on his way out of the team, one to replace. Now, could he be the first of many? That is the question I think a lot of Bears fans are asking. Now, the offensive staff, of course, are probably the top names that people are looking at. These are guys who've worked with Ben Johnson, and as we've seen with the likes of Kyle Shanahan at the 49ers and Sean McVay at the Rams. When you've got a head coach who is a top offensive mind and you've got an offensive staff that work closely with that guy, suddenly your offensive staff become very popular around the NFL. We've seen that Sean McVay has lost a number of QB coaches, in-name OCs, passing game coordinators, the same as Kyle Shanahan has, because of the fact these guys are associated with Shanahan and McVay. And I think Johnson is very quickly moving into that similar sort of conversation with the likes of Shanahan and McVay. Now, Declan Doyle, the guy in the middle, the offensive coordinator, I don't think he's ready to move on as a head coach. And I think also I think from what I've read as well, the Bears can block him leaving this year. So he could be traded for, I suppose, but I don't see any team doing that at this point. However, JT Barrett and Press Taylor are not coaches the Bears can block from leaving. Could it be that quarterbacks coach JT Barrett, who's done wonders with Caleb Williams this year, pass game coordinator Press Taylor, who's done a great job as well this year, could they face a situation where offensive coordinator needy teams start looking at these guys? These are guys that have high ceilings. These are guys who have high development caliber. So this could be a possibility that teams in the NFL could be looking at. Apologies as my dog starts drinking again. He always does this. The moment I start making a video, he goes to have a drink. It's like some sort of fucking Groundhog Day. Anyway, look, let's move it along. Dennis Allen. Now, look, as I said at the start of the video, I don't think that Dennis Allen is in a position yet to be a head coach. I genuinely don't see him becoming a head coach as of yet. He has failed as a head coach twice. He is very strong as a defensive coordinator. Now, one of the stories that is apparently doing the rounds over a possible exit this summer for Dennis Allen is the Denver Broncos. Now, the Denver Broncos obviously are still involved in playoff action, so at the moment, their coaches will remain as they are. Even if teams want to approach their coaching staff, the situation is that they won't lose coaches yet. Now, Vance Joseph, former Miami Dolphins head coach, the defensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos defense, one of the best defenses in the NFL. It could well be moving on to become a head coach. A number of NFL needy teams looking at head coach needy teams looking at Vance Joseph as a possible name. Now, there is a relationship there between Dennis Allen and Sean Payton. One of the stories that's been talked of in the NFL is that the Broncos could make an attempt to bring Dennis Allen to Denver to work again with Sean Payton. Sean Payton, Dennis Allen, good friends, good close relationship there. It would, however, involve a trade, a possible 6th or 7th round pick from the Broncos to get our defensive coordinator, an interesting prospect. Now, whilst this could be seen as being a bad thing for the Bears, losing a top quality defensive coordinator as Dennis Allen, look, Dennis Allen, people can point to the fact that the Bears defense has not been at all times great this season. which is true. It hasn't. It doesn't rank highly in any of the key defensive stats. We rank near the bottom in a lot of those things. But, you've got to remember that Dennis Allen has had a pass rush that has not worked for most of the season because of the lack of talent there. Dayo Odeyingbo obviously also going out injured very early. Also, the fact that he's had an awful lot of injuries to contend with as the defensive coordinator. He's lost Kyler Gordon, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Jalen Johnson for large portions of this season, which no doubt have affected what he schemed and how he's worked this season. So, look, that is a concern. But it could have a positive benefit for the Bears. Now, there's been a lot of talk that this man, the awesome Al Harris, I love this guy. I think he's so cool as well. Al Harris, who has been talked of as a DC elsewhere. The Cowboys possibly looking at him. If they get rid of Eberflus, wouldn't blame them. Who wouldn't want to get rid of Matt Eberflus? That people are looking at as Al Harris as a possible DC. Now, if Dennis Allen was to exit the Bears, it gives the Bears a very, very easy job to do. They promote Al Harris to DC. They therefore tie Al Harris down and keep Al Harris in Chicago. I think, you can't underestimate the work that Al Harris has done with that secondary. I think the guy has worked absolute miracles, especially if you consider the fact that a long time this season, again, he has been, a guy working without Kyler Gordon, without CJ Gardner-Johnson, without Jalen Johnson, without Tyreek Stevenson. He has worked wonders with Nashawn Wright. He's worked wonders with, a secondary that is, for large parts, being a second-string secondary. So it could mean keeping Al Harris, because there is, I think, a worry that even if Dennis Allen was to remain, that Al Harris could well move on to become a DC. But look, the only concrete one we've got at the moment is the Eric Bieniemy one to the Kansas City Chiefs, which I think appears highly, highly likely. Guys, I'd love to know your thoughts on all these possible coaching maneuvers, which will stay all over during this off-season. Guys, thank you for your phenomenal support as we continue to grow. I think we're on 508 subscribers now. I'd love to get to 1,000 subscribers ASAP. The sooner we hit 1,000, the more we can do with this channel. More podcasts we can do live, where we can get you involved, your opinions, more streams next season, pre-games, etc., etc. So please, obviously, hit that sub, ring that notification bell, and help us to grow this channel. And guys, always remember, I may be in the UK, but we bear down here too. Bear down Chicago.